As you're probably aware, this man managed to leave South Africa, essentially escaping the International Criminal Court's clutches right under the auspices of the African Union. Now, one of the members of that same body, Mr. Jacob Zuma, said in 2009 he would hand Mr. Bashir over if he happened to set foot in South Africa. So, what changed in the last 5 years? And broadly speaking, how can the members of the African Union expect to attract FDI when they can't even adhere to the rule of laws they signed up to themselves? We'll be asking that question and getting perspectives live from Cairo and Johannesburg tonight. Welcome to Global Business Africa. Here's what's coming up. Ugandan tech activists want children allowed to use smartphones in class. And we'll tell you why peanuts are the new gold in Senegal. Now, controversy does continue to overshadow the events and the progress, depending on how you want to look at it, that was made at the African Union summit held in South Africa. AU leaders, while there, wrapped up talks endorsing a 10-year development vision for the continent, which aims to facilitate the free movement of goods, services and people. Now, the South African government, however, is being very heavily criticized by the international community for allowing the Sudanese president, Omar Hassan al-Bashir, to enter the country and then leave and fly back to Sudan. Mr. Bashir has been indicted by the International Criminal Court over war crimes and crimes against humanity. South Africa argues that it gave him immunity as he was a delegate at the African Union summit, essentially citing the UN as a precedent. As an ICC signatory, however, South Africa is obliged by law to implement any arrest warrants issued by the ICC. The ruling party in that country, the ANC, has hit back. It's accusing the ICC of being biased against Africans, and in fact it actually uses the phrase arguing that the court is, quote, not useful. Let's expand this conversation and really Nyasir Kim in Cairo. He covered the latest round of elections in Sudan in detail. Angela Kuppel, of course, is live in Johannesburg as well, fresh from covering a pretty controversial AU summit. Angela, let's start with you. From the AU's perspective, they don't see these gaps in the implementation of rule of law as an obstacle to their efforts to attract FDI, do they?
Well, basically, Raman, the answer is no. In fact, the AU says that they don't recognize the ICC anyway, and the ICC's attempt to try and get Bashir arrested also doesn't hold any water. Dlamini Zuma said last night during her question and answer session after the closing of the summit that the actual venue belongs to the AU and nobody has any jurisdiction over it but the AU, thus kind of giving South Africa an opportunity to backtrack. President Mugabe had much the same to say. And remember, the AU's view has always been that no sitting president can be charged over war crimes or crimes against humanity either. And let's also bear in mind that FDI into African countries does come from African countries on the continent anyway. So there may be states with FDI that are looking to get into Africa who aren't signatories of the ICC. I'm thinking of a couple of the big European countries as well. So perhaps there's a view that it doesn't really matter if there is this flouting of the domestic rules or laws in South Africa. And look, there are some people who don't make a connection between the rule of law and FDI. However, in South Africa, of course, they use that as one of their big selling points, that we have a rule of law here and everybody abides by it. So it seems a big selling point. But you know what? This latest flouting of the domestic law isn't going to, the effects aren't going to be seen immediately. And that's where the danger is, Raman.
Indeed, yes. So let's come to you. Mr. Bashir, on one hand, dodging the ICC left, right and centre, but on the other, as we spoke about when you're covering the elections, he still needs to deal with the West in order to deal with legacy debt and get sanctions lifted and get the country's economy back up and running again. How does he expect to re-engage with this ICC millstone, as it were, hanging over his neck?
Well, he can move around. He's moving around in several African countries, in Egypt as well. He's trying to use the Arab arm, if you may say, to try to help ease tensions with the West, especially when he proposed that he is joining the Arab coalition, military coalition in Yemen. This is a way to try to engage with the international community, get some leeway through the Gulf, rich Arab Gulf states that have some influence on the West. So he's trying to move around, maybe very much restricted, but he's trying to find friends, if you may call it, new friends who are not really popular with him such as Sisi himself, the Egyptian president. Now they're closer. They were not before because of al-Bashir's connections with the Muslim Brotherhood, which is outlawed in Egypt now. So he's trying to use the foreign policy in a much more active way through the region to reach to the West.
Indeed, Angelo, though, let's focus on the one element of this story that everyone's probably familiar with. What's the latest on the investigation into how the Sudan's president's jet left the country despite there being a court order to bar his exit?
Well, Rahman, basically the court and the judges yesterday said that they're giving the state a week, 7 days, to find out and to explain how Bashir actually left South Africa. They want to know who allowed him to leave. So as it stands at the moment, the government is essentially in contempt of court. So between now and next Monday, the state has promised, and they have promised in public, to launch an investigation. The issue here really is that many commentators look, for example, at what happened a couple of years ago when those private jets landed at Waterkloof Air Force Base to attend a private wedding, and who was found guilty in the chain of command for negligence and subsequently exonerated. And many commentators are suggesting and hoping that this investigation actually takes a different route, so that it can actually restore South Africa's reputation as a country that does abide by the rules of the law. Rahman?
Indeed. For one final question for you, Yasser. Sudan does score quite poorly in terms of legal protection for lenders and also in terms of protecting minority investors, 165 or so out of 180 or so on the World Bank's Ease of Doing Business rankings. Are there any plans to fix these problems?
Yes, the Sudanese president, during his campaign last month in the presidential elections, he outlined a major economic reform program. It's already been accepted, new laws, investment laws that are easing and facilitating a lot for international business, for foreign investment, and for also local investors as well. But the problem for Sudan is not this. He can put all the laws he can, but as long as there is this embargo on Sudan, businesses cannot deal with a country that does not is not able to deal in dollars, in hard currency because of the embargo. A businessman cannot go in a place where he cannot take his money away when he needs. There's no transaction allowed with foreign banks. All the money remains inside. You cannot deal in dollars. And at the same time, there is no guarantee that your products can be in any way sold only inside the country. If you want to go in and invest, you need also a bigger market than this and a stronger economy. So it's the environment itself. It's not the laws and the facilities, because that part has already been dealt with by the government and giving all kinds of guarantees. And we've got a lot of Chinese investments there. They're doing fine for now, but because it's kind of detached from the West and the Western influence.
Indeed, we'll leave it there for the time being. Thank you both for your input, gentlemen. Yasser Hakim live in Cairo, and of course Angelo Coppola in Johannesburg. Now, speaking of Chinese enterprises, a high-level Chinese business delegation is in Egypt's capital. The idea is to boost economic ties and trade ties between these two countries even further. Right now, China has sunk in more than $10 billion worth of investments into Egyptian infrastructure. Yasser Hakim takes a closer look at China's future in Egypt.
Trade between Egypt and China has been increasing significantly. It reached $10 billion at the end of 2014, up by 40% in the last 5 years, making China the largest trading partner with Egypt. But investments don't exceed $500 million. On Monday, the two governments have moved to rectify this.
After intensive two-day meetings, we signed an initial agreement to establish 15 Chinese projects in Egypt in the field of transportation and electricity and in different industrial sectors through direct investments.
The new investments are worth $10 billion. In addition to the energy products, the Chinese will be constructing railway lines and a number of factories in several sectors, including chemicals, petroleum and infrastructure.
To cooperate with China is very important to generate different resources of our income and of our cooperation. Instead of dealing only with Europe or only with the United States, China and Russia also are very important to Egypt for the cooperation.
The latest political instability has not stopped Chinese companies such as mobile producer and operator Huawei from growing further in the Egyptian market.
I remember from 2013, 2014, and 2015, it's almost every year double of more than 50% of growth. That's why we take Egypt as our key. It will be the pilot market for the whole Africa.
Huawei, the third biggest smartphone producer in the world, has been operating in Egypt since 1999. Its headquarters in Egypt is now covering 23 other countries. That's not all. The Chinese group Itida has also signed a huge deal to operate a 2 million square meter Chinese industrial zone in Suez Canal.
China is the second largest economy. We believe in the next 24 months will be the largest one at the top of the world. China has a lot to offer to us here. I believe this type of meetings and cooperations highlight the fact that yes, we can do, yes, there is opportunities, yes, we have to do our job as business community to grab the opportunity and to put it into the right format for both benefits of China and Egypt.
These latest developments reflect the improving economic atmosphere for investments here in Egypt. It also symbolizes the strong will by the Chinese companies to increase their presence in the Egyptian market. Yasser Hakim for CCTV, Cairo.
On to East Africa now. Ugandan technology activists are urging schools in the country to allow students to use smartphones and tablets in class. Tell that to a conservative parent and it's heresy. Now, it's not part of the conventional schooling program, but proponents argue that this move will better prepare Ugandan students for careers within the nation's growing tech industry. Michael Baleke filed this report from the capital, Kampala.
Not a typical Ugandan classroom. At this private school in the capital, Kampala, students learn with the aid of technology.
Let's look at how we can
They say with gadgets like computers and smartphones, learning is much easier.
It's quicker than having to go to the library and looking through books for longer processes of research. I can just go straight to the point from what I want, Google it, and have my answers there with me.
And it is such a learning environment that technology activists are pushing for in Ugandan schools, an ICT-driven school curriculum.
Everything is going digital. People in the libraries now have computers, and so people are now reading e-versions of books, PDF versions of a pamphlet and that kind of stuff. So I do believe we are moving there, but it still doesn't mean that the books are now irrelevant.
Don't miss anything. Good?
Uganda's education ministry policy bans the use and possession of mobile phones in the country's schools. But some education professionals also believe it's time to shift the curriculum to suit technological advancement while worrying that some skills could be lost.
You know, there's a lot that, for example, is involved in writing notes, taking notes, however brief they are. The hand-eye coordination, you know, the way someone has to think as they write. That kind of skill, those little skills might be lost when all we have to do is typing and click away.
Settle down. Let's settle down.
The education ministry cites problems of disruption in class, cheating in exams, vulnerability of female students, and promotion of drug use as possible consequences, and some students agree.
Personally, I get distracted easily, so that's why I don't bring a phone to school.
But while views remain divided, some schools in Uganda are starting to allow a restricted use of mobile phones.
The debate about mobile phones in schools remains a hot one, but analysts argue that if schools are viewed as places of preparing students for the future, then perhaps they should be allowed to have all the gadgets they need in life after school. Michael Baleke, CCTV, Kampala.
Let's make a quick run through the markets here for you, see exactly how equity markets are performing. There's a bank holiday in Johannesburg, South Africa, so the JSE wasn't trading. Yesterday, of course, it closed down by 4 percentage points. Let's see if that momentum will continue later on Wednesday. Over in Kenya, however, the ripple effect from the change in management, the firing, if you will, of the CEO at the listed retailer, Uchumi, still filtering through into the market. Its shares were down 7% in trading today to just under 9 shillings. We're diving into real estate next, looking at the rise of mixed development properties in Kenya. And MasterCard is making headway into Somalia, a country that for a very long time has been cut off from the global financial system.
This is the first year that Africa will have more foreign direct investment than aid. And it's like the tipping point in terms of changing the way the continent is perceived. And I think this summit very much responds to that call. Now, whether it can materialize what is being announced is something that we'll have to check and see whether it happens.
Welcome back to the program. Let's move on to East Africa. Kenyan property developers are showing very little sign of slowing down. There's another major project on track to be built on the outskirts of the capital, Nairobi. The Kenyan firm Tilisi Development says this 400-acre mixed-use development in Limuru will be one of Kenya's 10 largest such private developments. It's being marketed as a live, work and play suburb with a combination of residential estates, schools, shops and a new logistics centre as well. With more than 3,000 new homes, the project is also expected to help ease the nation's housing shortage. The enterprise is one of a growing number of major residential developments popping up on the outskirts of Nairobi, with one of the largest malls in East Africa opening on Thika Highway last month as part of the Garden City mixed-use development. Let's get some details on that particular project. Kavit Shah is the co-CEO at Tilisi Developments, is with me in studio right now. Thank you very much for your time. Walk us through the price ranges that you're looking at for these 3,000 houses that will be built at Tilisi.
Okay, as Tilisi Developments Limited, it's important to note that we are actually the master developers. So our role is actually to provide water, power, sewer, and the roads to actually other developers. So our target is actually to sell to other developers to do their own schemes in our controlled environment. We have approvals for about 3,000 houses, and the densities range from 4 units an acre to up to 40 units an acre. So our prices are going to be roughly between 7 million and probably up to about 50 million as we go to the lower density houses.
Okay. When you look at the way that mortgages have been taken up in Kenya, I mean, we've only got about 22,000 of them in the country so far. Do you think that perhaps there might be a situation where you have all these houses built, but there's no one coming in to take them up, especially at this price range of around 7 million shillings per unit?
Yeah, I think obviously financing for our own end users, that's a massive problem in this market. And 22,000 mortgages, that's very low. That's a big problem, and I think that we have seen that in the market currently. I mean, there has been a bit of a slowdown because of the access to finance.
Indeed. You also mentioned a little earlier that your focus is mostly on providing the infrastructure,
yes,
the water, the roads and so on and so forth. How are you financing this entire program? What's the debt equity mix here?
Okay. So at the moment, we are completely equity financed. We've bought the land purely through equity. This is a 400-acre development, so we are going to look at it in phases. It's going to be about a 10-year project. We're looking at about 4 phases at the moment. So as we build our infrastructure, we are going to be looking for debt. So it's going to be a mix of equity, debt, and also an element of pre-sales.
Right. Just to clarify, though, how much equity do you have into the project already?
At the moment, it's 100%, and it's about more than 2.5 billion shillings.
Okay, fine. Moving on, though, you did point out when you launched a project in May that you're also putting in a mix of solid waste recycling facilities. Are solar power installations also part of the plan, or does it not make any economic sense whatsoever to put it in?
Okay, so our guidelines state that all the residential developments have to provide solar heating. We're also looking at maximizing, the surface area of our warehousing and using that for solar panels, which will help the end user minimize their cost for lighting and also heating.
Indeed.
One other thing we are looking at the moment is providing solar street lighting. We haven't made a decision on that yet, but we're looking into it, and we will be doing a thorough cost-benefit analysis before making a decision.
Indeed. We'd certainly love to see those numbers when you're done with them. Thank you very much for your time this evening. We've been talking to Kavit Shah. He's a co-CEO at Talisi Developments. Fascinating idea here, certainly worth following, and we will keep tabs on it right here in Global Business. On to Somalia now. Residents there are struggling, and an April 7th ban on the use of Hawala money transfer systems in Kenya. However, they might just have gotten a viable alternative with the introduction of chip and pin card technology to the country. Now, this service is also accessible internationally, and it's expected to tap into the lucrative Somali diaspora money transfer market. As Mohammed Hirmogi reports, that market is estimated to be worth billions every year.
Our biggest achievement, Your Excellency, this year so far has been the launch of MasterCard, which will now enable yourself and the rest of your team and your ministers not to necessarily carry cash in their pockets, deposit their monies in their accounts, go wherever they're going, and be proud to show a card that is produced in our country.
Chip card technology is growing pretty fast in Mogadishu, making it easier for Somalis to access their money. This is as a result of a partnership between MasterCard and the recently launched Premier Bank. The bank now issues and accepts the first MasterCard branded payment cards in Somalia.
We've since issued about 1,000 MasterCards. Our target is to issue 5,000 before the end of the year, and in 3 to 4 years, we target to reach 250,000 customers.
In a place like Mogadishu, given the unstable economic structure, ease in handling money is very important. And it's for this reason the bank is introducing the chip card technology.
We are also in the progress of introducing point of sale purchases. That is where now we are going to, you can use your card to enter a supermarket and just swipe instead of paying cash. And other vendors as well, not supermarkets alone, petrol stations, shops, and hotels.
The service allows customers to access their money outside of the country. Chip card technology is fast growing around the world. It's however first in this country. Smart card becomes the first international payment network to enter Somalia. And the services offered by the Premier Bank, it might just tap into the $1.2 billion remittance money and provide a convenient and safe alternative to the Hawala system. It is a formal and traceable network that also complies with international security standards. Locals say access is faster and way easier than before.
For example, the MasterCard has eased our handling of money. I work for a company and receiving money had been a long process. Wait for it for about a week, then receive it through the Hawala system. That's not the case anymore. We can access our money online, withdraw without necessarily queuing or going to the bank.
This technology and the ease it has brought is a new thing, and it's exciting Somalis. Even President Mohamud tried it out for himself. Mohammed Hirmogi, CCTV, Mogadishu.
Quick run through commodities. We'll focus on cocoa tonight. Some interesting news coming from the fourth largest producer of that commodity, Nigeria. Dry weather apparently is affecting the mid-crop harvest, expecting a 20% reduction in output over there to roughly around 50 or so thousand tons. Speaking of nuts, we'll be telling you about Chinese buyers are making peanuts the new gold in Senegal. Welcome back. Let's talk about peanuts, specifically those who grow them in Senegal. They're benefiting from a surge in demand for the commodity from Chinese buyers, and most local growers are reaping the rewards because the prices are actually rising. Local peanut oil producers, however, aren't too happy. They say their supplies have been affected.
Senegalese peanut farmers are eagerly awaiting Chinese buyers to purchase the upcoming harvest.
Chinese economic operators are always welcome to the groundnut basin. We are waiting for them to start the next marketing year set for November and December 2015.
Chinese buyers purchased the peanuts at significantly higher prices than the local market. Peanuts are regularly sold between 250 and 300 Central African francs, compared to the usual local fixed price of 200.
I would like to express my satisfaction with Senegal cooperation with China. The Chinese bought our products last year at good prices, and this helped us very much as farmers.
However, some farmers believe not everyone is benefiting from the growing trade.
We heard that some people among us sell to the Chinese their products at very interesting prices, while we're not informed. And in the meantime, we're suffering by selling our products to people who don't pay us well and others that are taking advantage of us in the transactions.
As a result of the increased Chinese demand, the government of Senegal has encouraged farmers to increase peanut crop production. The government says the export market to China has boomed since being opened up to Senegalese imports.
For
2 years, China's doors were closed to peanuts from Senegal due to sanitary and phytosanitary issues related to the quality of peanuts that was supposed to come from Senegal. Any peanut coming from West Africa, Gambia and elsewhere was considered to be coming from Senegal. A protocol was signed last year, and this year the implementation of this protocol gave extraordinary results.
Despite the government's enthusiasm, local peanut oil companies say they are struggling to supply their factories, as peanut farmers are rushing to Chinese buyers.
Today, our factory is temporarily inactive. We are in May, and it was during this month that the factories were running till the month of October. Today, in 2 months, we are done. It means that there is a real lack of seeds. We had to split among our 4 mills 100,000 tons of peanuts. That is extremely preoccupying and extremely serious for the future of oil mills in Senegal.
For now, however, most within Senegal's peanut industry seem to be extremely positive about the growing Chinese market. And that's good news for the economy as a whole. The industry is a major employer, with almost half of the country's cultivatable land being used to farm the groundnut. Andrew Thompson, CCTV.
Right, there's not much change with regard to the currencies we usually track here. If you're interested in buying up some debt, however, Zambia perhaps might be of interest. The parliament there is due to consider doubling the debt ceiling. Some of the borrowing they will make is, of course, commercial in nature. Here's what we're working on for tomorrow's program. Global digital migration. The deadline is here. We'll be looking at who met it and who didn't. Also, at the same time, we'll be taking you on an interactive journey into the Invisible, a Kenyan hotel where patrons eat and served and eat what they cannot see at all. That's it for this edition of the program tonight. However, as always, we welcome your feedback and your ideas. globalbusinessafrica@cctv.com is the email address to use. As always, the news continues on Facebook and on Twitter. We'll see you over there. Thank you for watching. I'm Raman Yahan.